All right, guys. Brad Chappell back here. Got Todd Huckabee with me, my new partner in crime, I guess you would say.
Oh, yeah. And we're at the Mississippi Wildlife Extravaganza here in Flowood, Mississippi. It's an awesome show. It is super packed outside, and me and Brad are both just chomping at the bit to get this started because we've got a guest here that hopefully is going to open a lot of our eyes up, which he already has mine just in the few minutes that I've talked to him.
He's already shaking his head.
I'm wondering what I've gotten into.
Oh, yeah.
This is Mark Griffith. He's a fish biologist. What's your actual title now?
I'm a biologist, and I do ag research for a living, but I've been doing fishery research since about 91, 92.
I met him a couple months ago at another podcast, and we were talking about night fishing. And we've been keeping in contact with each other and discussing some things, and I've been really excited for this one. Learning about crappie fishing is what we do. Todd's been catching crappie forever. I've been catching crappie ever. And, we want to learn more about them. What's the future of crappie fishing when it comes to these hybrids? What do you think?
Wow. Okay, here, let me kind of background just a little bit.
Absolutely.
Okay, so y'all came up to Tupelo,
yep.
and we were talking, about some night fishing stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And there just came, the hybrid came into mind.
Yeah.
And just so happens that I've been playing around with the hybrid since about, 2014 is when I stocked some.
Mm-hmm.
But to rewind back to about 95, 96, we were looking at Ole Miss. I was
mm-hmm.
working with MDWFB at the time of crossing some of those blacks and white crappie and pressure treating those eggs, or either chemical or temperature shocking them, trying to get them to be triploids, because that was the key, to grow crappie in ponds, because it's been pretty much.
Now tell our viewers that word again.
Triploid?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, that's just a sterile. I don't want to go too deep into that biology of it, but anyway, the trick was to get around the crappie in small ponds. It's
mm-hmm.
just been biologists, consultants, and even me. The places that I managed up until 2014 or so, I didn't want a crappie within 5 miles of any water body, less than 100 acres. Because I've seen them overpopulate and just be a nuisance of, 7-inch, 8-inch fish that are just not, they may be fun to catch, but you don't eat. It just wasn't good to have on a private body of water. So all that being said, I just threw out hey, what's the growth rates going? I said, hey, I'm hitting,
mm-hmm. I can't wait till you throw that out there.
And we're stocking at 18 months. We're getting some 12-inch fish, 11-inch fish.
Any kind of crappie fisherman out there knows that is just mind-blowing to me, that we can get fish that size that quickly. I mean, that's just unheard of in the natural way of things.
Yeah, and that's so it started with Vince Haygood on that.
Mm-hmm.
So it was
mm-hmm.
a 20-acre lake. I was doing some management on it, and it was not a very productive lake. It had a lot of flow through. The nutrient base wasn't there to grow a lot of fish. It had some old crappie in it, and the owner said, I mentioned to him about the hybrid crappie, and he said, go ahead, try something out. It didn't have the groceries. I'll use that term a lot. It didn't have the groceries really to do high biomass, a lot of fish. And Vince, being the crappie fisherman he is, he would fish, and he'd go with me when I'd lecture fish. And those fish will move deep, and I couldn't shock them.
Right.
Well, Vince would catch them, and he was sending me pictures. And I'd say, no way.
Where you at? You're at the right place.
And this was unproductive water.
Yeah.
And we were still getting good growth rates and good weight. And I said, this could be cutting
mm-hmm.
edge. And then we introduced it into several more ponds that I had the groceries set up to put those hybrids in. And we're getting these hybrids out of Arkansas. It's public. I mean, they've got a recipe to make a crappie lake, but I've always been leery.
What's the recipe to make the fish, the hybrid fish?
Okay, so they're just taking the black male and the white female and crossing those fish.
When you mean crossing, dig into that crossing term.
Okay, so you just take what we call the right female, and when she's ready to lay, you catch that. I mean, as a matter of fact, we'd go out shocking in the spring in those creeks in Sardis Lake.
Yeah.
Get up in the backwater, and you'd get those big old sows ready to drop eggs. And we'd take them back, and you'd just, strip those eggs out, and then we could find those black stripe. That's what we were looking for, those indicators, that black stripe. That was a black crappie.
What is the scientific name for that black stripe?
There you go. You got me. Of all I could have studied, he starts throwing some scientific names. Sorry, Dr. Jackson, my professors and stuff. And my 9 to 5 hydrologist, I don't key out fish like that. I could give you some of the bass and some of the catfish, but I couldn't give you genus and species of crappie right now.
I'm pretty proud to stump you that quick.
Hey, can I get a hat?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. You want a hat over that one?
Okay, yeah. All right, so where were we?
Well, just how you're doing this, how you make
Yeah, so you'd take, the male, and then just get those eggs fertilized and put them in jars, and then you'd crank out those fry that are that F1 generation of a hybrid. And being a hybrid species, whether bass or a lot of different things, that energy's focused that first year or so, not to really get maturity, it's just growing. It's just genetically altered.
Yeah.
And that's with bass and stuff too, what we've seen. And then in those smaller fish, you get what we call jumpers. So you put a batch of fish, they were all hatched at the same time, same birthdays. And within 6 months, 8 months, you'll have fish that have those genetics that just outgrow their brother and sister tremendously.
Would you call that a F1 crappie?
Yeah, it's first generation cross. F1 bass, F1 crappie, magnolia crappie, whatever you want to call it. Gorilla bass, tiger bass, people. I mean, every company, everybody doing it's got their own niche on it. We may have a Griffith crappie for this thing. So. No.
I know Todd and I said something about the magnolia crappie yesterday, and that's why I wanted to throw that out there. What did you say about the magnolia crappie, Todd?
I just said I didn't understand why this state decided to name a fish that exists in other states.
And it comes out of Arkansas. Right. That's what gets me. And I stopped in the Enid hatchery years ago, and the past fisheries chief of fisheries was there doing some work, and I asked him about it, and that's who. They had some real good results in some state lakes too. And I was quizzing him, what about the magnolia hybrid? What's this and that? And there's not a definite answer. So so what I do is I use a local guy, and it's Jimmy Harden out of Calhoun City, and he will go wherever and get fish. There's 2 places in Arkansas we get those hybrid crappie, and they have a hybrid crappie pond recipe. Here's bluegill bass, here's what to stock, and yeah, that's just like cooking right there, but it's like making biscuits. You got the same thing, but every water body's different, every cook's different. You put that same ingredients in there, you just have to see where it's going. And I've seen that water quality and structure, that's the key component. Side by side, what we've seen, and that's why there's no guarantees, which, it gives us biologists an out, so we can say, well, we're still after it.
So will a hybrid crappie reproduce?
Yes.
Do they throw back to their mother or father, or will they throw a hybrid?
You do the genetics on it. It depends on that dominant recessive trait of those offspring.
So either way.
Either way. Either or, you could say 50-50, but I'd be scared unless you did some kind of genetic tracing to see. The only trick is this, with that hybrid reproduction, they call it inferior or something like that. Well, there's not as many. And then, so I was leery. Let's go back 14, 15, started doing more ponds.
Yeah.
And I'm lucky enough to have an electrofishing boat. And these places that they let me manage the property,
right.
But I've got a little hidden interest. I may show up a little more than regular with my shocking boat in those shallows to try to find that
Do you
young
find these
fish
hybrid
for
react different in water as far as what they're doing? Like day in and day out? Are they in a different portion of the lake? Don't tell me I got you.
No, it's crazy just because last month I had some bass growth rates in a 50-acre lake there in North Mississippi, and I said, well, I'm about to put the shocking boat up. It's gotten too hot for this year, but I'll come, see what we can find. And we put some hybrid crappie in, and it seems like it was spring of 20 last year. And I asked them how they were doing. They said they'd caught a few. And as we were cruising around the brush piles, 4 to 6 feet of water to try to find some bass to get those numbers, I saw those hybrid crappie scattered. I mean, I forget how many. I think we did a couple hundred in that 50 acres, and I caught 10, or shocked up 10, netted 10.
Is that how you catch fish?
That's the only way, partner.
Right.
Yeah, you see how many, all the gear I have. I mean, you put my tackle box in my hat.
All right.
He knows, yeah. I mean, that's...
When you have a shocking boat, you don't need much gear.
You just got to watch out for those green trucks.
Right.
I mean, I anticipated crappie to be out suspended and stuff. I mean, water temp's high.
Yeah, it's hot.
And that's when I get somebody else to go sample crappie. If, wants to know this time of year, they go out there, live scope, pick out some big fish, and I can get numbers there. But those fish spread out, and I was thinking,
What do you think that is?
Man, head scratcher. I mean, that's another thing where we think we got the pieces where those fish. Now, you guys know big water. I'm, a couple hundred acres less.
Right.
And it's total. I mean, I got people want to, build big lakes and stuff like that, or build a 50-acre lake and want it to be like, Eufaula or anywhere, Washington or something like that, or they know that, Grenada Sardis, they want big fish. It's apples and oranges. But if you can put those groceries in front of them, the patterns are the same, spring patterns and stuff. And now
that's what I was interested in. Would they go shallower quicker like a black crappie, or would they stick to the more of the white crappie side as far as the water temperature goes, or do we know that yet?
Okay, well, most small bodies of water, there's only a few areas that they like, those creek runs and stuff, whereas big water, you got a lot more areas. So you can target those, they'll hold the brush and stage and then run up and spawn. And, like you find them on like stake beds or key, they'll run up in their spawn or either back off in that what we call, that more productive water or happier water where they like. And now with electronics, you can see those. And that's what even the lakes that we're building, we're kind of staggering them to that. We got the creek channel, we got the flats, we got brush, and I'm strategically putting brim beds to where, and that's what I'm feeding these crappie on, are bluegill. I do fathead minnows and bluegill to start off.
For crappie.
But I add some bass because if there is reproduction, I don't want that to get out of hand, and that's where, and even it's recommended to go higher on bass, just to really, so your pond or lake will almost be bass crowded, but you can raise a fat crappie in there. It's just the habitat's a little different, and that's what we're seeing.
So kind of explain to us, we touched on it a little bit before we got started, as far as identification.
Yeah, I knew it was coming. How can you tell a hybrid crappie? Because I have guys, and I've heard them, and Todd as well, hey, I've got a hybrid crappie here.
So here's a real quick little backstory. Before we got started, I was talking to him, and he pretty much told me, you can't identify one. You don't know what a hybrid looks like. You don't know what a black looks like. You don't know what a white looks like.
We pay attention.
And I love that, because it's been an argument forever and ever and ever of, if it's got bars, it's a white crappie. If it doesn't have bars, it's a black crappie. Well, what about when you follow them muddy, or Grenada's muddy, and these fish come out and they're just pale? They don't have a mark on them until you put them in the live well and they get some coloration. So now this is going to be, hopefully, for viewers at home, something that's really cool.
Well, and I immediately went back to when the F1 bass came out. Everybody was saying, is this a Florida or Northern? Is this a Florida or Northern? I stocked F1s as Florida. And there was no way of knowing. But then the crappie, it was easy. You could identify those hard dorsal spines, white and black. You know, if it's over 6, it's black. 6 and under, white. If, ands, and buts. But now that we know, they've probably been crossing naturally anyway. But it's until we see these exponential growth rates that you tournament guys are going to start. I mean, they're going, we're looking for hybrid. Where are the hybrids hanging out? Where's that weight going to be?
Right.
And so if you can catch a fish and say, I'm in the hybrids, mark that dude, because I mean, they may react different. I see where you guys are going too. You know.
Yeah, I'm interested in it. Definitely.
So, but as far as I know, you know, and any kind of pigment, markings and stuff, we were schooled as fishery biologists not to use that because, you know, just like the black stripe on the crappie, you know, from the nose all the way back, it was black for years, but now we've got some crossing going on. The dorsal spines, you know, it may just have 6. So what do you know, you got to go with how it's keyed out in the book. So, and unless somebody comes up with something visually, you know, to say, to do it quick, I don't know.
I want to go back to somebody that's just getting into crappie fishing and they go out and catch a colored black fish in the springtime. What are they catching at that point? Because a lot of people don't know.
Yeah, I'll get it, you know, say caught a nice, you know, limit or whatever of black crappie. And they're just as black, speckled up and everything. I'm leery. I just, you know, yeah, you caught crappie. Congratulations. I mean, good deal. But until I count dorsal spines.
But those black fish, what are those black colored up fish? Are they
you know, it's
female fish, male fish?
You got me. Because I'm thinking now of how many fish that I get, you know, brought in, looked at, that I'm counting spines. They're colored up. By the time I get them or see them, you know, they've lost some of that. And thinking back, I mean, I want to say majority were black crappie. But still, I wouldn't just say, I couldn't just point it out. Looking at, a lot of times bars will give it away, or that slope of the nose. But you got me on that. I mean,
well, I mean, like a standard white crappie during the spawn, the male fish is going to turn a black, pink, you know, skin color. But a lot of people, I take that and say, well, that's a black crappie because he's black colored. And I think that's just, people don't know it. That's just during the spawn that fish turns black for what reason?
I think it's just, you know, it's the way, what way, you know, the male fish do brim. You know, they get that dark pigment and stuff. It's they'll do that come spawning season. Now, I think I heard, you know, your water clarity too will determine that pigment. But it's But you know, blue. I go back to bluegill. Those big dark purple. You know, they're really in the spawn. You know, full moon and stuff get colored up. And I think crappie the same way.
Yeah.
And you know, it's the fish we see that if people are fishing structure and stuff, and that's probably that small percentage of black crappie come in, because in the Pontotoc area, we don't get a lot of people that are spider rigging out in the open and stuff to get more, you know, white crappie later on. So,
you know, Brad, what you was talking about with the white crappie that we thought were white crappie till he told us may not be, but
doesn't change everything.
In the spring when the males do get colored up, and me being somebody who will tell people, no, that's just a male, you know, it's not a true black, because they had bars and they look like white crappie, and black crappie are very, very rare in Lake Eufaula. And I would say, no, those are just males, okay, whenever I own my store. But then, fast forward to now, some of our females in the spring are starting to turn. And so it may be like you were talking about, of how many of these subspecies that we've got to where eventually it's just going to be a crappie's a crappie.
Yeah, well, that's what we touched on.
Right.
Is that, you know, I can see where I'd want to know where the the black crappie are, the white crappie, and when, where I can get those patterns to help me in, you know, my guide business or tournament, or just
Catching.
for me catching.
Yeah.
So if, you know, if I'm helping somebody manage their property, when they show up to fish, I want to be able to tell them where the fish are, because sometimes that's what they say. Mark, I'm paying you to manage it. Tell us where to go catch these fish, spring, fall, winter, where are they holding? So then knowing if it's white or black, because we know where the white crappie, you know, black crappie gonna hold the structure,
Right.
and this and that, and some growth rates. So that's where, you know, tournament wise, it may just be where if it's got 2 or 3 criteria that say it's a crappie, and now I'm going out on a limb there, you know, a crappie's a crappie.
Crappie's a crappie.
You split it, because that's when you guys weigh in. Does it matter white, black?
No,
It-
definitely not.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's say a guy that's, you know, got a piece of property and he's wanting to, you know, manage it for hybrid crappie. What should he do to his pond to make it really ideal to raise crappie, big crappie? As far as the structure and the groceries, you brought that up in the beginning. How can somebody make their impoundment ideal? And I use the term ideal loosely, I'm assuming.
Yeah, because everybody's goals are a little different.
Right.
But still.
How would you make an ideal pond or small lake or what have you, in your opinion?
If it wasn't existing, you know, so an existing pond is kind of, you got to
Go what you got.
take what you got, make what you
Right.
want type deal. But if it's a new property or something, you go all the way back to see your watershed. The what flows into that, how much flows through, what kind of nutrient bank do you have, and that determines your biomass. How many pounds of fish can I grow in this area? And then if that works out, because you can tell your soil types and everything like that, what goes through, if you know, fertility rate, all that factors in first before I even, you know, put the
dozer on?
yeah, before we even put equipment on it, we look at all that. And adjacent properties, how do they mud up? You can look at soil types that way.
Right.
And then, you know, if all that checks out, then we'll, you know, first of all, build the dam. And people will start asking, we're going to do creek channels and humps and islands and structure here. I said, we're going to build the dam. That's if the ideal property. You get the dam, and then you see, okay, you know, I look at everything. I look at, you know, the north-south orientation to where I can tell dominant wind stuff. I mean, it's crazy. My mind, yeah, it's pretty twisted. But, you know, structure to where somebody goes and fish. There's very few times that they're not in a high productive area where I've got, you know, groceries spawn. I got bluegill constant in this area, and those fry will go to this structure. This structure is going to be limbs and brush and stuff. I've got areas that will, this time of year, I'm growing weeds and flats. So when that comes back up in the fall, you know, I've got groceries hiding in there.
So you've got your dam built.
Oh, yeah, it's back up.
Okay. You've got your dam built. Do you want a lot of deep water, a lot of shallow water, a lot of mid water?
Okay. It depends on where you're building the dam. I mean, North Mississippi, we've got a lot of what I call gully plugs. So, I mean, by the time you go from ridge to ridge, cost-efficient way to back up the water, you know, you just take what you got, make what you want. A lot of times,
Ideal.
I won't go over, you know, if I don't have to, 12, 15 feet of water.
Okay.
Now people say, hey, I catch fish in 30 feet of water, 25. I said, well, there's a little difference in where you're fishing. I mean, they may go down there, but I want as much productive water as I can. Now, I don't want a lot of shallow, but, you know, 10 to 15 feet on normal is what we're going to get, you know, North Mississippi. You start getting in the Delta flat land and stuff,
Right.
it takes a lot more to dig deeper places. Then you run into sand and all that. But, you know, 20 to 25 feet of water doesn't hold a lot of fish consistently for me to design one that deep. Sometimes, you know, during the year, the heat of summer, I can get fish in creek channels. But I sat out yesterday and cooked in 110 degrees, and I knew fish were there, and I caught one or two. And I didn't have the electronics with me, which was good. because that'd have been aggravating to see that they were there sitting there. I always think I could get one to bite a jig, but you know, that's where, just because it's ideal, but that'll, I mean, to back up, keep it manageable.
Do you study pH of water at all
pH?
with these ponds?
Absolutely. But you have to, because it goes back to, we're going to get into water quality now? Okay. So I'll get a call, say, Mark, something happened to my big fish. The clients came in, we didn't catch anything, what's up? And it goes back to alkalinity. So I'm going to trump you on pH. We'll go back up to alkalinity. That's what buffers your pH. So summertime, alkalinity may be a little low, which your alkalinity doesn't change a lot. The water body has pretty much a set alkalinity. You can lime it and fix that. But if it's a little low, that pH can go from low in the mornings to high in the evenings. And a high pH swing will shut those fish down. And I've got feeders running, you know.
That gives me another excuse when I'm fishing, I believe.
Absolutely.
Right.
I said, man, that pH changed today. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's
yeah.
kind
Just not gonna catch 'em.
it's kind of like now you're gonna see. Oh, if it's low pressure and high pH, just stay.
I'm gonna have a little kit in my boat, I believe now. I'll say, hey man, this pH changed in the last 24 hours.
yeah.
Shut them off.
That's it.
We're gonna start carrying little pull kits.
Yeah.
And you mentioned pressure. There's a lot back in the day when electrofishing biologists wouldn't take the boat out with crazy pressures,
Right.
because those fish would move deep, and people think, hey, you're shocking, you're electrofishing. It doesn't matter where the fish are. Well, you can only get down 6 or 8 feet,
Right.
and they move deep. You can get out there and shock all. You can hit those edges all you want, and you know they're not there.
Yeah, I was talking to Mark last week, and that's what I wanted to come do, is actually film him shocking some fish, and he's promised me we're going to have a crappie connection video of that happening.
This fall or definitely next spring.
Yeah, I'm ready. I think it's going to be so cool.
Absolutely.
So you want low pH
Okay.
or low?
I want suitable alkalinity, higher than 50. It buffers that pH so it doesn't swing as much. That swinging pH will affect bluegill. It stresses fish.
Yeah.
So that affects feeding, reproduction, everything. But certain times of the day, I mean, it's your algal blooms and stuff, summer. That's when we get a high swing on it. And that's where people say, I need to lime a pond, I need to do this and that. Well, I'm not a high component of fertilizing when I don't need to, because we tend to grow more fish than people can catch anyway, you know, which is a good thing, I guess, but they can get stunted. And that's something else with the crappie, hybrid crappie component, because I'm sold on it. And matter of fact, the main guy I use for fish, Jimmy Harden out of Calhoun City, been doing it for 50, 60 years. He said it's a game changer. And, you know, it's to the point that we're not seeing any reproduction. And he said, Mark, I'm sold on it.
How exciting is that in the crappie fishing world to me? I mean, it's, like you said, a game changer.
Yeah, I enjoy going to big water and fishing and seeing how it's done, you know, well, if you could have that in your backyard,
Yeah.
and in the springtime, go catch some decent crappie and have, you know, 12 to 14 inch bass. They're readily available, you know, which is fun. You know, it's, you get a 14 inch bass, 2 pounds. I mean, you get somebody that can go out and hook 10, 15, 20 of those in a round and then have a few kicker crappie. What better, you know, backyard pond is that?
So on the hybrid crappie, what's the largest that you've seen?
Okay, there's one, it went from a 30 to 60 acre lake, perfect habitat and everything. We had exponential growth rates. We got to just over 3 pounds, 3.2, 3.3. Now, I stepped out on a limb and I said, if that was last year. I said in 21, if we get a loaded up female, we could possibly do 4 pounds, but I hadn't been back there.
What's the address?
Well, see, hey, it's you know, and I hope if they watch, that's a good and bad thing, because that's something with what I do, I can't tell you,
Yeah.
I hate it. And when I was talking with his owner and said, hey, I'd love to come look at some of these, fish and stuff. This is exciting, and he'd say, I'd rather you not, because the word gets out. Then you've got distant kin. I mean, you just won the lottery.
No doubt.
But there's some people that say, I want to share this, Mark, because this opened my eyes. I want other people to know that it's doable. And now, it's Mother Nature we're dealing with. We may get another batch. The ones that we stocked this year in 21, we may start seeing reproduction. I hope not. And well, it is what it is. We'll have to address it. But if you've got enough predators in there, when those crappie go early, I'm thinking those predators are cleaning up, because I hadn't seen any reproduction yet. And now I said that, this fall it's going to be,
Right.
When we meet again, I'll say, okay, you know what I said? Yeah. But
So the crappie that was 3.2, how old was that fish?
I'm trying to say it. I think it was like 2.5 years.
Wow.
3 years. I'd have to look back, because I tell you what, and I was looking at some pictures last night, and this one there's like, I think it was 5 grandkids on a dock, and there was a picture of 84 crappie, and the average was 2 pounds.
The average.
Average, and
Wow.
it was 2-year-old place.
Wow. And, and these fish are fry when y'all stock them, or?
That's right. There's they'll say a small, medium, large type, and we go pound per thousand, whatever. So you really don't know, and depending on how many they raise and stuff. I mean, and they're $1.25 a piece. You get a larger one, you may pay $1.50, $1.75, and you're going to pay $1 for a catfish. An 8-inch catfish, a stocker catfish, 6 inches. You may get them for 50 cents delivered. So, and that's what people say. I don't. Yeah, let's talk money on this. When I mention, hey, you've got a bass crowded pond, let's try to grow some, hybrid crappie. We get them big enough that the bass don't eat them. Then you may have something if you've got, enough bluegill groceries to support that.
You think this will open the door for maybe a commercially raised crappie that could be sold in stores with that fast of a growth rate? Because there's been a few people that have tried it, I know, but the growth rate was so slow that it wasn't worth it in the end. But if you grow a 2-pound crappie in 2 years,
you could call and order them tomorrow. It's the same fish you get. I mean, it was the hybrid crappie we stocked in there, but it's the water body. If you get those groceries and structures, somehow that fish, and it's jumpers, it's that same, she outgrew her, brothers and sisters.
On that ideal, I'm going back to, I'm a guy, which if I hit the lottery, I will be that guy. But if I've got that ideal pond I'm wanting to put in, I'm going back to how much structure does a crappie need to have in a body of water to become ideal?
Wow. Okay, so I'll do structure so I can hold the groceries.
Okay.
Because I want that fish, crappie or bass, to be able to have an all-you-can-eat buffet with a little bit of effort. And I want to keep loading that buffet. And you got bluegill spawning. And if you've got real good places where they spawn and you strategically put structure, and that crappie likes to hang out that's where they are. If you can consistently put that right size fry, whether it's 6-month-old fry, a year, 3-month-old, in its face, so to speak, that's when you put the weight on. And then you spread that out where those crappie aren't competing. Yeah, crappie herd up like no other. You see it. And then, but if you can disperse that structure and you put the hybrids in, so then therefore you've got fish on each place getting fat. And that's exactly what we hit on these couple. It just,
So a lot of ideal structure close to spawning areas?
that's what I do. I love existing lakes. You drain them down, and I see where those brim beds are. And I tell the dirt guys, operator, we'll flag that and said, don't touch it. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. You know?
Right.
And then we'll work off of that. Now I may make some road beds and stuff to try to, up the biomass. Say, hey, well, this water body, we should be able to grow more bluegill and stuff in it to support this. So let's take why they like that material and let's do it over here and stuff. And we'll go small brush piles. It's not big stuff. I mean, we'll put up posts.
That was my next question.
With brush around it. I mean, it's manual, and that's just from going with, the guys with the new electronics. And that's what I got with Vince. It was, when side scan came out, I was in, because I could see brim beds. And I could say those are better, those are worse than they were before. And now that we started seeing those fish in that structure, and then here came live scope. And so looking at that, you're picking out where those big fish.
Even my thought process at this point, even if I'm putting lake into a body of water that's acceptable of me doing that, I need to look for brim beds and put me some structure next to those brim bed locations would be an ideal for crappie as well.
Yeah, well, it's just, you see it with the brim beds, there's always a few bass cruising. I mean, they're picking off what they can. You get a juvenile bluegill, well, even not, they're ready to spawn 3 to 5 inches. And that's perfect for growing a fat bass. So if, you back those groceries out, or that crappie likes what, a 3-inch or so, probably, now, shad, I figured y'all'd go there
I'm
quick,
going.
but we're going
coming.
to, I have to, yeah. I've got an out on that. I'm just saving card up my sleeve. But yeah, that you're exactly right with the structure on that. You got to keep that buffet going. And, we cut limbs, the size of your arm, and then we put it around a post. To where we put a leash on it instead of just piling limbs on a post. We put a leash, and we'll have limbs. Some people say it's a brush wagon wheel or brush donut. It'll be brush all the way around, and we'll have 30 feet of thick brush, and it doesn't matter, cedars, whatever out there.
That was my next thing.
And,
Wood.
and me, I've had the luxury of electrofishing, natural structure, store-bought structure, PVC, everything,
Right.
and it all has its place. But when somebody finally says, hey, what benefits the fishery the most? And that's the woody structure, side by side, hands down. And that, it's like the Christmas
The
trees.
cedar.
The Christmas trees the first 2 years are great. But if you spend 5 hours going to hunt Christmas trees, cedar trees on your place, you could have put in 4 or 5 other structures that I've seen them go on, be on pines, oak trees, leaves within a day. You leave your trailer in the water too long, there'll be brim up under it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I can see it right now. Crappie come under that shade.
But the drawback with all the structure is fishability. So I say, yeah, all your fabricated. Would that be it? Yeah, it's manufactured. It's great fishing. You don't have to, somebody getting hung all the time, me included. I'm one. Yeah. Oh man, there was a big fish in here yesterday, and the first time, I'm stuck on it. All right, go ahead and fish it. You know how it is. Oh.
That's what the bait companies love, though.
Yeah, well, that's when you snap it off. Yeah. So the woody structure holds a lot more than others, but the other stuff will grow what it needs to support the fishery.
You didn't want to get too technical there, did you?
I'm staying back because
I've seen it in your face.
You'll grab that term and just, put me under the table again, man. You what? So yeah, we'll go back to, we're making the perfect lake. And then, strategically put that structure. How many, to where, most people only have, 2 hours in the morning, 2 hours in the evening to fish. And that's where I put it to where they, they're in productive water all the time. Because, I mean, you go to a place to fish, it's like, okay, where are we going to fish? Because 30 minutes before dark, we're going to be going down the levee and we're going to fish here. So you've got you're sitting out there cooking all day or whatever, waiting for that, magic time. Why not put, strategically place it out there and, seeing where stuff, because sometimes we'll put road beds in and the fish don't use it. I mean, that's, whereas, somebody, they read that they need gravel and, road beds and stuff, and not always so. You have to be careful where you put it, and.
Now, what kind of, if we're touching about the shad part, what am I going to go purchase to put in my lake, or am I going just bluegill, or?
Okay, so we hey, we've got our structure in, everything looks good, or we filled it up, and then we added our green structure. So that's another thing. People, when they will draw it down and say, hey, we're going to put all this structure in, and they put it in when it was green, and then we took some rains to fill it up. Well, it dried out. Then it all came up. If you throw something in green, it sinks. And that's when we'll set post and then fill it up, and you see where the posts are. Then you put your green structure on it, and it sinks. You're not toting blocks and doing all this other stuff. And you make those leashes to where you can just add to it over time.
We'll have to film that when we come up there.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
You gonna help me?
Yeah.
Tote brush?
When you go back, say 5 years later or 2 years or whatever, will you pull the old structure out to put new down?
Let it go. So,
Just let it
so you have
decompose?
the leash, baling wire and stuff, or it'll rust out and stuff. Some ropes and stuff you can, but I'll slide it down that post. So then all you've got is, you've seen old Christmas trees. All you've got is the trunk, and those limbs are laying down there, and you may have a few, one sticking up, and then you reload other on top of that. And I guess if it gets too full, you just move over, because you're just putting these, spreading them out. Because what we saw is you put a post up and you can only put 2 or 3 tops on it, and you're full. But you only got a small area, 10-foot circumference that you had brush in. But if you spread that out all the way around like that donut, and you have the post, you throw top water across the post, now I'm getting into bass stuff, and you could bring fish out of it. Or with the way the brush is out from it with the trunk and the limbs this way, when you go to it, you throw your worm toward it and you're pulling with it. You're not flossing, as we, so to speak, because if you just cram brush on it, it never fails. Hey, we've got an 8-pounder sitting in there. Go ahead and pitch. And you got 80-pound braid or whatever, you got to sit there. Yeah, you could pull it off of there, but you got to, you want to sit and somebody else fish it. Well, if you line those up the other way, your chances you're pulling with those forks and stuff on that brush. Now, crappie, not so. We cast for crappie. And y'all noticed, it's coming back, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
I say coming back. I just heard some guys the other day saying they were casting for crappie, and I said, wait a minute.
I've been doing it the last 6 weeks, 8 weeks, nonstop.
See, because I always thought that'd be too slow. Too fast. Because I see, you guys targeting the fish, but now, I put the pieces of the puzzle together. You start using 24, 27-foot poles and people scaring fish that far away, then go ahead and cast to them, because that little splash.
Yep.
Look at there.
Excites them. That's how we're going to look at it as it's coming down.
Oh, man. Do I need to go tell the guy at B&M about his pole maybe?
No.
I'm kidding.
He knows. Him and I were talking about it yesterday, how it's kind of come full circle. For a long time, it was long rods, longer we can get, longer, and like me with my rods up to 15, 16 foot, and now all of a sudden everybody's like, I don't need that long rod, I can just cast right up there.
Well, now
it's going back the other way, yeah.
But now we can read the fish. We got the electronics. You can see how that fish reacts. You coming up on the fish in the wrong direction. You guys are putting stuff on your trolling motor to where you're stealth coming in there. And that's what you know, I've used it in the private sector to see where those fish are when. I mean, it's such a useful tool. And, you know, you can see where your bigger fish,
Yeah.
you know, you go to a brush top and see small, medium, and that large fish in there. It's as good as electrofishing.
So do you think that some of our bigger lakes will start stocking a lot of the hybrid crappie? You think it would be beneficial?
Gosh, there's so much that goes on with the big lake. You mean big lakes is in like
Washington.
Washington?
Washington's a good example. 6,000 acres,
Well,
roughly. Good cover.
I want to look at the cost benefit. You know, would you naturally what's going on? And I'm not sure I'm more familiar with how Sardis grenade, how they react with the flood control, water levels, how that goes. So, you know, I think that'd be a drop in the bucket. The incentive would be if you stocked a bunch of then, you know, the revenue generated. It's the new thing of being, you know, yes, there's be some guys that can target that and benefit, but overall, I don't see it right now. Because I mean, we're growing huge crappie. I mean, that's on our big water. There's still folks. I mean, we're still. I think you said a bucket list. And nothing against you guys out there, but I mean, I was amazed.
Y'all's fish here now. That being said, and Brad can tell you, in the last 12 months, there's been more 3-pounders come out of Oklahoma than Mississippi.
All right.
But it's these guys that are going to these little city lakes, and
Okay.
they're discovering, like, wow, these little city lakes that nobody fishes from a boat, just from the bank, hold giant fish because they've been unpressured. But these are much older fish than a 2.5 or 3-year-old hybrid that's already at 3 pounds. So that's what I'm asking is, you know, if you can grow something that large that quick, I think it would be beneficial for some of these smaller lakes that are these smaller city lakes to say, okay, let's throw some in here. You know, it's a 200-acre or 300-acre or 1,000-acre little city lake, and then all of a sudden this small town has got a lot of people coming to fish it.
There we go. Now I'm with you. I'm on that because that's, I mean,
That'd be very smart.
It'd still be public water. It's not private.
And you don't run the risk of being overpopulated so quick that we've been so scared of for years. Absolutely, absolutely. Because, you know, it's still new to me of how quick on a few of these places we can get those crappie that big that quick.
Right.
And I'm not pulling odorless. I'm not matter of fact, I'm gonna start tagging more fish now, doing tag recapture. I got away from it with bass just because, I mean, it's a lot of work. There's some concern about stress, capture stress, everything. You need to do it certain times of the year. It's just, I mean, you have to be careful with that because do you stress the fish? Does that affect it later? You know, looking at growth rates. There's a lot of going on scientifically there to try to do that on the small scale. But still, it give you an idea of your growth rates and stuff.
I'm going to give we announced it yesterday that we have this audience, and I'm going to give these guys an audience. If you've got any kind of questions you want to throw out to the man here, you can step right up here to our mic and shoot it out. So if you got any kind of questions when it comes to crappie in general, this is a good opportunity to take advantage of that.
And any of the people that watch this podcast a couple of weeks from now or next week, be sure and comment and ask these questions because I have a feeling that he's going to be back on here many times.
We're going to see him in this either fall or spring. I want to get on that shotgun boat.
And while you're thinking of a question, I want to touch on where I'm going with now on the groceries, the biomass, the lake. What I'm seeing is really looking down further on the food chain is your algal blooms and zooplankton. for groceries for bluegill since it's since the shad we
Yeah.
hadn't gone there, but bluegill they're so dependent on that algal bloom, and I've got so on this, you know, getting my water just right green with the phosphorus fertilized. I think I was starving fish growing too much of the wrong algae to where it affected zooplankton and stuff. So that's some other cutting edge stuff that in the works.
So the first thing you mentioned when you talked about bringing it into a person's pond was like actually draining the pond and doing work. All right, so for the average person, they don't have the money to do that. What is the most important thing that somebody that doesn't have a huge budget to spend on it, what is the most important thing that they can do to have the huge crappie that you're talking about without adding all this structure and all these different levels of water and your islands or whatever it may be? So what's the most important thing that they can do as just starting from scratch with a pond that they already have and putting this hybrid crappie in, or just the average crappie?
Okay, wow, great question. Okay, so so it goes back to how I mentioned when I first started digging the pond or whatever. See what that pond, where it is now, productivity-wise. Where is it silted in? How old is it? What will it grow? And then, you know, start with, okay, recommended per surface acre would be X amount of fish. Let's just say 100 per acre. Okay, then we start breaking it down of how much productive water do we have in that 10-acre lake?
Right.
You know, do I go out and just, you know, buy 1,000 fish? Or, well, I want to look. You want to look at your structure and stuff. So there's how you set your budget. You know, okay, maximum fish if I had maximum habitat, and then step back from there. Okay, you know, are we growing enough groceries from that? And that's going, you know, in Mississippi, we've got great services from MDWFP. You know, they can come out and do a quick assessment. They can troubleshoot a lot of this over the phone. We got great biologists there. And then they'll hook their boat up. You get on the list, go, you know, do that, and they'll come do an electrofishing survey and give you a nice report. Those guys, and, you know, it's a free service we provide.
Yeah.
And then, you know, or there's several, you know, consulting firms around that can, I mean, discuss money and terms up front. Don't let anybody own your place before, you know, everybody should be transparent. There shouldn't be, you know, any surprises. That's what I tell people. I like surprises on my birthday and Christmas.
All right.
You know, before, you know, services and stuff, I want to know, okay, if you come do an assessment, I want to look at crappie. What will it cost me? And, you know, let's go from there. And if they're reluctant to give you an idea, you may want to look further.
Get a second opinion.
I hate to say it, because that's, you know, that's how it should work.
Appreciate that question. Anyway, appreciate your time, Mark. Can't wait to do some more fishing with you.
And we got time for one more?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, absolutely. Jump on in here.
I missed, that's all good information, by the way, thanks for that. But I missed the first part. How are you making the hybrid crappie?
Okay, we're crossing the black male and the white female.
So you're just throwing them in a pond and letting them go, pretty much?
Well, this is, they're do that in almost a laboratory setting at the hatcheries. So they'll harvest those fish and, you know, right there, more or less in the tank, in a bowl, fertilize those eggs and roll them, and that's how they're cranking them out, and that's how I purchase them.
Okay, so they're not making the triploid hybrid crappie then?
Well, it's just
pressure treated. It's just put them together and there they go.
Okay, you touched on the pressure treated chemical temperature. I helped with some, Glenn Parsons.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Okay.
So back in the day, and you know, I don't want to say anything about the research, but from what I think there was some reproduction in some of those. I don't know if it was nailed down or not, but I was always leery with the crappie. But that's how it's done, and you know, the couple producers out of Arkansas, I mean, they usually entertain questions and stuff, because they produce these fish, and I'm sold on it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's awesome. I'm going to start buying some and just dumping them into random spots, see what happens.
Look at you.
I think it'd be cool.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Appreciate Mark, Todd. It's going to be a good thing in the future with this guy here. We're going to get some more information coming from him. Hit that subscribe button. Cannot express to you enough what it means for us. It's helping us grow. Comments, something that simple. I have people ask all the time, what can I do to help the Crappie Connection? And that is by commenting and subscribing. Telling your buddies. If you got somebody wanting to learn about crappie fishing, and we touched on the podcast yesterday, we're going to really dig in and teach people the basics all the way to the advanced like we've done, but we're really going to try to get more people into fishing.
And also, on any video, you can just pick one. Go in there and make a comment on there and tell us something that you all want to hear covered. Whether, like last year at Grizzly, we were talking about, all right, let's talk about cork fishing. Let's talk about fishing below spillways. There's a lot of stuff, I get people all the time. They're like, all right, well, I'm bank bound. How do I catch them off the bank?
It's coming.
And we're going to be showing some videos and some actual on the bank, not on the water, fishing stuff. Teach people how to do this. So anybody that's got any questions about anything, get a hold of us.
Brian Chappell here.
Todd Huckabee.
Mark Griffith, enjoyed it.
Thanks.
About a mile from Big Muddy River, a place I'll always remember. Cabin on the lake and a fishing pole. Forever here I'll rest my soul. I can feel